Hey, welcome back to the rules of engagement. Just went over a little bit about how you can kind of know when to invest in economy and production to hit a timing attack at a certain point and how that relationship works. Now we're going to get on to a section about how you can try to look at your opponent's economy and production and make a more informed decision based on what they're doing and how it all relates to each other. So we'll take a look at a couple key concepts, and the first one's going to be basically do different races have the same type of relation between getting that investing in economy and how long it takes to pay off in production. And then also how to figure out the difference in your own production capability and your opponent's production capability. And then also how do tech and upgrades factor in to how you should decide to make these timing attacks, and basically how do they factor into your effectiveness in production, I guess is a better way to say it. So let's jump into this replay here. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is going to be let me jump back just a tiny bit in this game. There we go. The first thing we're going to talk about is do different races have different economy production relations. We talked about the Terran race, right? Terran has to first get the extra economy. Every race does this. They first get extra economy, but the production is what's different. If you have extra economy with Terran, then all of a sudden you can go to SCV, you can build a barracks, or a factory, or a starport, whatever you want to build. Then you have to wait for that barracks to finish, then you have to start units, then they finish and units come out. So Terran is kind of the slowest of the three races as far as their production abilities. Protoss is a little bit faster because you can build the gateways, right? It's same as Terran. You get extra money, use that money to build gateways. But instead of having to then wait for units to come out, as soon as you get warp gate technology, you can turn the gateways, these guys, into warp gates. In fact, that's what's going to happen very soon. Then also those warp gates can pay off much quicker because you don't have to wait for the unit to build. Zerg out of all three races, Zerg is going to be the fastest race to produce these units because Zerg, the instant you get that extra money, because of the way larva works, is you can turn larva into either economy or into units. You can just throw that money right into more units right after that. So you can be Zerg, you get extra money, you can instantly put into units. So Zerg, your production, your economy pays off the fastest, then Protoss, then Terran. Now next thing we're going to talk about is how to figure out the difference in your production and your opponents. So that's what we're going to look at this game again as we'll just play through it. We'll talk about the two players, right? The game and the players aren't super important here. This is just to basically get an idea of how production works. So the Terran player here has 3 barracks, all with add-ons. A barracks with an add-on, regardless of which add-on it is, has the same production capabilities as a warp gate. So as soon as Protoss gets warp gate and these add-ons finished, they'll both be at basically the exact same production capability. Now the next thing we're going to talk about is basically how that can factor into timing attacks. So if the Terran, if they both have the same production ability, that means there's not a strong reason to attack, because if you attack, they'll have the same amount of units, if not more, because of defender's advantage, and they'll have a better positioning because they can defend their ramp, right? So they're going to be a little bit in a better position. There's not that much reason to attack, except we talk about how upgrades can kick in. So both players can produce units at the same rate, right? But what happens is, look at this. Terran's gained these 2 upgrades. As soon as these 2 upgrades finish, what they mean is that every unit that's been produced is a little more effective. So all of a sudden what they do is, once you get these upgrades, is your units basically are worth more, and so your production is worth more than your opponent's. So that's a great way to know that, okay, even though I have 3 barracks and he has 3 warp gates, as long as I get that upgrade, my production is a little more efficient. So he can go and he can scout his opponent, right? And you can see he has 3 warp gates, I have 3 barracks. That's the best way to tell their production, is by scouting the opponent so you know exactly what they have. And then, once you scout him, you can just counter production buildings like what I just did. Now, if he's an experienced player, we can go look at it through his point of view. He hasn't scouted that, right? But experienced players can usually know just from the opening, right? He saw I was probably going to do a 1-gate expansion. I think he saw the probe come down here, and he's like, okay, given that opening, it's most likely he has this amount of production, so this timing attack is pretty decent. Because I have the same amount of production, but my units are going to be a little bit higher quality because of that, these upgrades timing up. So that's how upgrades and tech can factor in. Because even though he only has the same amount of production as me when he launches this attack, the way basically upgrades and tech give you access to more cost-efficient units. And so you can say my production buildings are worth more because the units are more cost efficient. Same thing you could say that of a robotics. If I was building a robotics, I could say, okay, robotics is worth as much as 2 gateways if I really want Colossi versus his composition. Or he can say the same thing with a starport reactor at Medivacs, because that's an extremely powerful unit. You can make them 2 at a time. So starport might be worth 2 production buildings. All these things factor into wanting to hit a decent timing around here, just because that's right about when his upgrades finish. So even though we're both on 3 production buildings, as soon as he gets stim and combat shield, he's really basically at 4 production buildings, because each of his units is worth that extra bit more because of those upgrades. So that's a great advantage that he has. So let's rewind it back a bit and talk about how you can decide this from his point of view. So he wants to launch an attack that was like at the 8-minute mark, right? So if you notice this, like I said, you want to build nothing but economy, and then several minutes before that, he wants to focus on economy and nothing. He doesn't want to ever cut economy for his timing until a few minutes before. You notice it was about 4:30, so he's aiming for maybe a 7:30 attack. That's when he starts investing in his extra barracks, making a few units early, ideally, and then instantly getting all these add-ons, because these add-ons finish at 6:30, and now he can crank out a couple rounds of units from these production buildings, and then he wants to hit before I get too far ahead of him, basically a couple minutes after this, after he gets all his production set up. You notice that it was 6:30 when it's set up. He gets his army. He moves out at 9, so he can hit me at 9:30. Remember how I mentioned earlier that the way to do the timing is you look at when you want to attack your opponent, and then given that time, 3 minutes before that, that's when you need to get those production buildings start to be set up, so you get at least a couple rounds of guys and then go on attack. If you start building your production facility just a minute before your attack, they won't produce you very many units to help in your attack. If you build your production facilities way earlier than your attack, like 10 minutes before your time to attack, then, I mean, you may need them for defense. You might want to get a couple. But if you're cutting economy to get production that early, you would have been better off getting more economy and then a few minutes before using that economy to get a massive amount of production that would then pay off in a greater scale. So always look for that timing. You know, if you're going to cut economy to put a lot into production, or cut tech or upgrades to put a lot into production, look for a timing about 3 minutes down the road from that point. Wraps it up for this short segment. We'll take a break and be back with the next segment, which is going to be talking about how to make the perfect timing attack and take everything into basically account when you make that decision.